Good morning, everyone. So thank you for joining us at the closing plenary session of the 40th anniversary of the annual PAASE meeting and symposium. So for today's plenary session, we will be focusing on higher education and research development training in the Philippines. We are very honored to have our guests with us, our speakers, who are very proficient in this particular topic. So for our first talk, it will be given by a couple of our experts in the country. Our first speaker is Professor Cynthia Bautista, a professor of sociology and the former dean of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, College of Social Sciences and Philosophy. She is an executive director of the UP Center for Integrative and Development Studies and commissioner of the Commission on Higher Education. Bautista served as advisory or governing boards of institutions such as the Philippine Institute of Development Studies, Philippine Social Science Council, Human Development Network, Asian Scholarship Foundation, and the NUS Asian Research Institute. She chaired the UNESCO National Commission Social Science and Humanities Committee and the ASEAN Qualifications Reference Framework Task Force and sat in the executive committee of the ASEAN Quality Assurance Network. She obtained her Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology from UP Diliman, magna cum laude, and later earned her Master's and PhD degrees in Sociology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Her awards include the National Academy of Science and Technology, Outstanding Young Scientist, and Outstanding Publication Awards, the 10 Outstanding Women in the Nation's Service, and the National Research Council of the Philippines Achievement Award for the Social Sciences. She will be joined by Professor Grace Javier Alfonso, a previous professor of film and mass communication at the University of the Philippines College of Mass Communications. She served for 3 terms as the Chancellor of the University of the Philippines Open University and became involved in distance education and open learning and served her first administrative duty as the Dean of the School of Distance Education in Diliman for the University of the Philippines Open University in 1995. She also became the director of the UPOU's Audiovisual Teaching and Learning Laboratory and the director of the UPOU Multimedia Center. Dr. Alfonso is also a multi-talented artist excelling in various media. She is a painter, a sculptor, a filmmaker, a director, film researcher, and critic, and an expert in multimedia. She has been bestowed numerous awards and distinctions, some of which are the 2013 Concepcion de Dulfalsa Award of Distinguished Achievement, the UP Artist 1, and UP Artist 2 in 2015 to 2017. So without further ado, let us all welcome our speakers.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the indefatigable President Giselle Concepcion of ASE and to the incoming President, former Secretary Ernie Pernia. Good morning to Secretary Boy de la Peña. Good morning to the distinguished colleagues in the Philippines, and good morning or good afternoon to our distinguished colleagues, the PAASE members in the United States, wherever you are. So Gigi, Alfonso, and I are given 40 minutes to actually give share our thoughts with you. Since I tend to meander when I talk extemporaneously, so please allow me to read my notes, at least parts of my notes, so that I can pack as much as I can within the short time that is given to us. So sorry, I forgot.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to add that Dr. Cynthia Bautista is the current Vice President for Academic Affairs of the University of the Philippines System.
Okay, so basically, rapid technological changes in the last 3 decades, as reflected in the convergence of information technologies, specifically AI and biotechnology, climate change, and now the COVID-19 pandemic contribute to the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguous situation in our world. Even before SARS-CoV-2 virus came to our awareness, we were already very much bothered by the number of learning days our students used to lose because of typhoons, strikes, unanticipated non-working holidays, and political events. In fact, Gigi and I were really planning to actually begin a campaign within UP for a lot of educational reforms in the teaching at the teaching level. But COVID actually helped us because we did not have to spend as much money. We already got permission to have conferences as well as workshops starting June of 2020, but we did not have to do that. Upending the world as we know, this pandemic has slowed us down and raised our anxiety levels. But on the positive side, it is also catalyzing higher education reforms and opening windows of opportunities to leverage technology for teaching and collaboration in research and technological development. As a background to the way Gigi and I organized our discussion, UP is part of the Asia-Pacific Rim Universities, a network of leading research universities in the 18 economies of the region, and one of 6 ASEAN member universities, the others being NUS, Nanyang, Chulalongkorn, University of Malaya, and the University of Indonesia. In the last 4 years that I have been attending the meetings of senior officials, and Giselle used to attend this before me, and occasionally the meeting of the presidents of the upper universities, the meetings revolved around 2 major concerns, among others. How our teaching and learning can address the challenges of the 4th Industrial Revolution, including making our curriculum flexible, non-conventional, more interdisciplinary, mixing face-to-face, virtual, immersive, and experiential learning, customizing minors, challenging the energies of the B students towards innovations and entrepreneurship, because usually the A students, they stay in the university, revising core courses to ensure that 21st century competences are honed, and how our research can contribute significantly to the search for solutions to problems in our region, including multi-hazards, the digital divide, Pacific deoxygenation, I guess the blue economy that NAST President Rod and incoming President Ernie were talking about earlier, population aging and sustainable cities and landscapes. There was an intriguing panel in the 2018 meeting of the APRO presidents where 2 of us from ASEAN were asked to speak together with other representatives from East Asia and Americas. The theme baffled most of us in Asia. It was public trust and the changing role of universities. We argued that in Asia, public trust in our universities remains high, vis-a-vis public trust in some US universities, because of the turn of the US politics. So I did not realize that at that time that was an important theme. The theme was ultimately a question of the impact of universities in the public mind. Where the Philippines differed from Singapore in our response was, for Singapore, public trust was not only because universities provided qualifications and credentials to the population, but also research-based innovations and technologies. Our general public has yet to imbibe a science culture and appreciate universities not merely for credentialing, but for valuable research that translates into technological solutions to our problems. This is why we need to continuously communicate and collectively showcase technologies produced by universities in venues such as what was done 2 years ago with the DOST, which was the Aghambayan Festival. So our agenda this morning is to share our reflections on the challenges confronting research universities worldwide in this time of pandemic. Gigi will focus on leveraging technology for teaching and learning even after we move on, and we'll also say something about research, even after we move on to a better normal, while I will share my reflections on research and on PAASE as platform for seeding research ideas, catalyzing more interdisciplinary and cross-institutional research collaboration, providing a venue for discussing the translation of research into innovations, and in so doing, help the Philippine research community achieve greater impact on the development of our country and our people. While Gigi and I discussed how we were going to segue to each other, we did not have time to actually talk about the flow. So consider our 2 parts as sharing of 2 very senior academics of our ideas about teaching, learning, and research, especially in the next normal. So Gigi. Sorry.
Yes, thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Maraming salamat for asking me over and saying something and sharing my thoughts. I'll go directly to sharing of the slides. May I do that? Okay. Is this okay? Can you see this? All right. So it's about continuity and enhancement and transformation of Philippine higher education. And UP as a national university strengthening the culture of sharing in these digital times. Right now, I'm very much involved in as a member of TWG of Flexible Learning in CHED because for 12 years, I've been serving under the technical panel of distance education, and now for the last 5 years, chairing distance education transnational education technical panel. Kaya lang ako napunta dun sa TWG. So we're helping out here, and what is important now is that research and learning and teaching will be an emerging process. So hopefully that happens, but as we do design this in our ways of looking at flexible and remote learning and teaching. Flexible learning actually would be making use of offline, online, and non-digital and digital technologies, and while remote will be purely online and the use of LMS. But as you know, our 1,900 higher education institutions do not have LMS. Very few would have the LMS, but not also maximized. So we're trying to design certain types of flexible learning that would be inclusive and make sure that students are not left out. So of course, we talk about floods, etc., and so on. We always would have suspending our classes weeks, 3 weeks or so, but COVID-19 is very different. Overwhelmingly disrupted their way of life, and the effects will still, really be there for quite some time. And we will reconfigure how we do things in academia, in teaching and learning, in research, and acquiring new knowledge, and so on. So, and the way we also engage our learners and our teachers. So, technology mediated and technology enhanced learning and teaching has been around for quite some time. And just before the pandemic, this was all the time in international conferences. So let me, because of, IR 5.0, actually it started in, it's 4.0, which we're talking about all this artificial intelligence and so on. But critique it after a couple of years. And so it's now talking about 5.0, but pushing for social entrepreneurship. So that's what's happening in the Industrial Revolution now. And we're talking about the web that has exponentially grown so fast. And now it's called Symbionet Web, the intelligent web. It just used to be symbiotic web. Now it's Symbionet Web. So we have what we call as, wearables, embedded sensors, and so on. So this has affected really EdUp 5.0. We talk about diverse time, place, and pace. And we talk about project-based field experience, looking at data analysis, and change of exams. So objective exams, it's because that is in the field of mastery-based education, but now we're in outcomes-based. However, we can go beyond. That's the minimum requirement, actually, to be outcomes-based. And we talk about MOOCs, OERs, flexible learning, flipped classroom, blended learning. And this has been going on, student ownership and lifelong learning, for quite some time. Now we have COVID. The technology mediated, technology enhanced learning and teaching was actually branded as disruption because it was really questioning, or it was really transforming the traditional face-to-face learning and teaching. So in fact, it's now learning and teaching instead of teaching and learning. So for continuity and enhancement of education, now we're looking at the same concept. But now, of course, there are so many anticipations, anxiety, and fear. So everybody's talking about lack of equity, increase of the digital divide, low digital literacy, drop in enrollment, lack of academic freedom, setting aside of Filipino cultural identity, transfer of students from private schools to public schools, closing down some private schools due to lack of operating funds. And we're talking about 1,900 higher education institutions. So parents are not financially prepared, teachers not prepared to shift to from traditional face-to-face to online teaching. So higher education institutions not prepared, lack of connectivity, changes in research methodologies, no access to laboratories, difficulties in OJT. But we have no choice. Lockdowns. Face-to-face learning, teaching is banned. For how long, we don't know. So everybody's thinking about this. So we are now reviewing and mapping out where we're going, knowing our identity as a university, who we are, and different sets of faculties and researchers with all, different views, but very mindful of developing learners with 21st century competencies. And so now, at this time of pandemic, more so. So our learners need to be creative. We've heard this, but it's really a mantra. Creative, they should be creative, critical thinkers, problem solvers based on empirical data, innovative researchers, have good communication skills, respect for our cultures, possess deep love for our nation, and advocates of lifelong learning. And they need to be strong, resilient, because it's once again a VUCA world, and in the depression times, it's an old term, but it comes back. So our learners should be resilient, so do we. We should be doing that. So CHED came out with orientations on flexible learning. They're pushing for this, they have announced this. And flexible learning is a learner-centered approach that is deeply rooted in the needs of students. Flexibility on the learning content, schedules, access, assessment, making use of digital and non-digital tools. And exercise of discretion by HEIs is emphasized, and formulate decisions using data-driven and participatory approach. And we're talking about our HEIs submitting their LCP, or learning continuity plan, before they start teaching in this academic year. Flexible learning should be outcomes-based. 3 times in the guidelines, we talk about outcomes-based. In terms of learning content, HEIs shall review all their curricular offerings and mechanisms to inform, to orient our learners on the learning system. And my other slide for the policies: establish means of student and teacher engagement, establishing linkages up to telecommunications company, because that is always the problem, the connectivity, maximize the use of technology, explore grants, ensure health and safety protocols, and encourage consortia, coalition, networking for capacity building programs in sharing of resources. And of course, again, outcomes-based. So where are we now? This is where we are. Academics are engaged in reflexive mode, looking at all these aspects, because the moment you touch the delivery mode, other elements are, however, affected. So we're talking about curriculum design, course design, use of production and content and resources, delivery modes, assessment, student, and faculty support. All this, because of the appreciation of the paradigm shift, would depend on the resources of the HAIs and the administrators, their resolve to go flexible, and the teachers and students and parents and stakeholders as well. So that's the present situation. Everybody's reimagining the management of all these elements, but we will certainly have various models of flexible and remote learning and teaching in this country. And I think we will be good at it and maybe lead in the region in doing so. So these are some of the things that we're looking at. And what is most likely would be the change in requirements and assessment. So you will notice a lot of research will be going on in this process, in the change that will happen. So I call this flexible convertible. If face-to-face will come in, at least develop na talaga yung mga courses that are going to be offered. So what is really the heart of this is the learner-centeredness of flexible and hopefully the remote learning models that we will come up with. Because our students, you know, in the latest survey, 15 to 20% of our students have connectivity and the rest they don't. So it is most important that we think about this with access to internet. You know, we have students with access, high satisfactory connectivity, and they have gadgets, they have the laptops and the tablets and so on, and high to satisfactory digital literacy. That's one type of students comfortable in using remote, and they're the ones who can access the LMS. So there's no problem to that. But there would be students who will not be able to access the LMS with minimal to no access. Marami po yun, and the connectivity is always a problem. Low digital literacy may be comfortable with offline or non-digital technology. And therefore, knowing this, it is important to use various digital and non-digital technology as delivery modes as long as it carries outcomes-based education. So guidelines, outcomes-based, we talk of pushing our students to be independent learners. And so therefore, the writing of our course guides and also of our course content, in fact, should be for independent learners. Therefore, you have assessment questions, wraparound chapters, and articles written in modular form. So requirements must encourage transparency, accountability. And now, the push for research-based requirements, project-based requirements, and how do you now make sure that they're the ones doing it? So the reporting should be probably videoed or have portfolios, documentation of the process that they went through, and documentaries and video or portfolio form. What is emphasized is asynchronous learning. But the fact that we're residential teachers, we always opt for synchronous learning, and we think that Zoom will really finish the job. But what we recommend is really optional synchronous learning. That will be just for orientation and facilitating learning, asking learners what they do not understand in the course materials, and activities, and to lecture, not to lecture. So the course design, course guide, and course resources help students become independent learners. Because when you look at it in residential form, what does our what happens is that we lecture, and but if you take away the lecture, there will be minimal the interaction will be there, and so on. And that's the one that will have to go into the synchronous learning. So the design, so we have to do the course design for independent learners, the guide and the resources, clear guidelines on OER and intellectual property rights, plagiarism, and updating of students, teaching complement, and the reporting. But all the burden, most of the burden, is on the faculty. They are to curate and produce their materials for resources, identify experts who will be there in their courses, and do their podcasts, their lectures in the podcast so that it's recorded and be accessible anytime, but not to use the synchronous mode. So learner-centered, self-assessment questions, and activity-driven exercises, that's what the faculty will be doing. So they're the ones who need the laptops and the digital gadgets and all that. So there is that faculty fear factor in this VUCA times, in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous times. UP as a national university, how does it now take out the anxiety of our faculty all over the country? Help in doing so by, strengthening the culture of sharing. And now, what did it do? Right away, UP Open University gave free online courses, and every time they go live, 32,000, 60,000 come in. So, and they've done this, and today they have another one. Yesterday they had another one, etc., and so on. So it's ongoing, and we've been doing this for free for higher education teachers. And also the MOOCs all out, always, with a lot of registration, and they're giving out certificates for this, also for free. These massive online courses are really up to, a lot of participants are coming. And the UPOU networks, it's out there with hundreds and hundreds of titles of resources. They're all OERs, open educational resources, that our teachers all over the country can access and put in their course packages and course content. The same is true for TVUP, which is really a testament to the University of the Philippines' character as a national university, a teaching, research, and global regional university shared freely with all state universities and colleges, private and public higher education institutions, and other training institutions and the general public. As you can see, we have, many hundreds and hundreds of titles. And this is shared, just go tvup.ph. And let me remind you, of course, si Giselle, madami kaming materials na si Giselle ang aming featured. So it's an internet television network of the University of the Philippines, featuring national scientists, national artists, scholars, researchers, documentaries, award-winning short films, and of course, much more than that. So we have, it is actually a multimedia production center. It is a digital OER repository, and it is a publication system. And it is, you can download it for free with open license. It is, it has a mode that is TV on demand, and also daily programming, and there's a search mode. So if you're researching for materials for review of related literature or whatever, then you can just type in the topic and all the resources come out. type in the name of the resource person, and all that they have done would be there and easily accessed. So it has this feature, and it's important that the Filipino scholar, the Filipino researcher, claim their place in the virtual platform and share the thoughts for all who want to access them. So it's so important that that's why this is really a call. When I saw the many titles of the exchange of ideas in this symposium conference, I got excited. My heart went blah, 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 blah. And so we can invite, for those who want to offer it to OER, under OER, then it's really would be a great thing. So we can talk about it on how we will do that. So now there are a number of professors that we have come together and volunteered. This is where I think Joel was talking about volunteerism. And we come up with, this group of faculty would come in and we come out with some, and I would like to share this particular instance where we did a webinar, Write Shop workshop on flexible learning for a university system. That's the University of Rizal system. And what we did was put together all the faculty in the main, we had 150 participants, grouped them in according to the discipline, etc. And then we had a team of facilitators, and the university president was there all the time. And they had the resolve to open August 24. So that was the main drive. So we had to do it for the first 3 days, course design, etc. So brought their syllabus with them. We did the course structure, turned them into modules, and so on. And we talked about learning theories, and this is interesting. So we have behavior through time. We know this has been the usual, and then humanism came in, and then where emphasizes value and of the human agency. And now connectivism is a relatively new learning theory where you connect your learners to experts. And this was really developed during this digital and technological age. So we're deconstructing the whole process. What do we mean by learning outcomes? What do we mean by requirements? What do we mean by learning and teaching activities that to engage our students? So learning intent, we talk about active verbs. You know, we always go back to Bloom's taxonomy, and the history of this, there's change from noun to verb form, creative way would be the higher order thinking, but they said, no, it has to be flat. You know, everything is needed to be able to have good learning and teaching. But look at this. Look at this. This is the exciting part, you know. Look at the creator, okay? They're new terms. They have the flavor of the digital. And if we have learning outcomes like this, what does that mean? We don't know yet. It will happen, and I hope we do a lot of research on this. So, are the course objectives the same? Yes, but it should be learner-centered, the way it's written. So active verbs, what they should know and be able to do. And so we went through this with the URS experience, and they come out with all this in the first 3 days, and talked about planning the learning experience, matching the experts, coming up with podcasts, video lectures, etc., and coming in with identifying all the texts that they need from journals, from e-journals, and so on. And now we talk about the course requirements and the assessment. So this is the great question. How will we measure the learning experience if it's research-based, project-based, and not objective exams and so on? So We discussed that too. And so after the first 3 days, now we went into activities and came up with a workshop. So we taught everyone to create their own channel, in their Gmail. So that's where they can put their courses and so on. So to be accessed for those who have connectivity, but everything would be written already, but this one is an addition. All right, so there will be intro videos, and that's what we asked them to do. So after the first 3 days, and then in between yun so we had merong 4 days sila in between. Nagpuyat, lahat, and came up with this and I was amazed that they can do it, and they brilliantly made all these materials. And I said, wow, it's so fulfilling. At first, they were all afraid, and you had to encourage them, and blah, blah, blah. And look, after the whole, I almost couldn't believe it. I was so happy, and, So these are things that can happen. These are unimaginable. So let me stop this and, okay. So I'm in my ending part. So the faculty fear factor, we have to all help out. All help out to take away and crush that fear factor. So you're in the middle of things. And I hope everyone would be going to this. And I see this happening, multimedia research. We talk about e-research, e-methodologies, e-pedagogies, e-modalities, all merging into one, looking at all these aspects. And I think we will be breaking new grounds. So thank you very much. I hope I didn't overspeak. Salamat po. I'll stop sharing my slides. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Gigi. I'll take over from there.
Yes. It's your, yes. Talk about research. Go ahead, please, Sage. Sorry.
So I'm now going to share some reflections, but maybe focus on one reflection. So today, the sharp distinction between pure and applied research no longer holds. And the idea of a linear progression from fundamental inquiry to applied research and the development of new products is no longer an accurate depiction of the process. I am a sociologist, and in the sociology of science, we make a distinction between mode 1 and mode 2 knowledge production. It's more complicated than this, but just to simplify, there are 2 modes. While research has generally been carried out within disciplines and academic departments, my focus is on research that is increasingly pursued along mode 2, involving partners from different disciplines who work together temporarily in a less hierarchical manner in search of solutions to particular problems. And I think PAASE has been very much engaged in mode 2 research. Mode 2 knowledge production is really the knowledge production at the forefront. Since my administrative duties prevented me from reconnecting with researchers from other universities, forgive me for taking off in my notes and in my reflection from my experience in the University of the Philippines in the last few years. Because this experience shows me a particular gap that needs to be filled to make a research and a research community have more impact on our society. So my first note is a very obvious note. The university has a critical mass of experts in various disciplines across branches of knowledge, but they work in silos and are not connected with each other. When I just moved out of CHED, and then shortly before I took over Giselle's position, there were 2 areas that I am told we really have to develop, at least 2 of the possible areas. One is omics. I'm a social scientist. I didn't understand what omics was about. But because I was in the beginning of PICARI, I was in CHED when PICARI began, and talked a lot with the former secretary, Willie Padolina. So Willie was the one telling me, omics is very important. Then the other one is data science, of course. And I thought then, because there was, shortly after I came from CHED, there was a meeting in Makati. I no longer remember who organized and all, but Dado Banata was there. And then Dado was saying that what we did for data analytics in CHED, because we actually shepherded data analytics as part of a track for computer science and for business, he said that's not the thing now. You really have to go into data science. And so I asked, what you mean? Because I was also familiar with the proposals for data science masters of some of the universities. So I asked him if he meant this particular MS program, and he said yes. He said more or less it's that. So when I went to UP, I thought, oh my God, we really have to do this, because I didn't know that we had data scientists. But thankfully at that time, the Center for Integrative and Development Studies was convening a program. So the current Chancellor Fidel Nemenzo convened that program, and that program was to actually bring together the different people doing work on data science. And we convened, so the system convened this particular network in the beginning. And then I was so shocked that there were so many data science people in UP, even in UP Mindanao, all the way, except that they didn't know what each other is doing. So hopefully this network will continue and will thrive. So the network, so it's a network. However, you need people to actually move networks like this. But this is really an obvious thing. We all work in silos, but we need connection. The second note is government, the university's research programs and centers serve as connectors. My main thrust now is the connecting, because it's the connecting that actually will produce whatever synergy there is. Because if people are experts and they're not connected to each other, so you might even have multidisciplinary teams working separately, but they don't know of each other and they don't have a venue where they can discuss, then you don't have synergy and you might not be able to achieve what you could have achieved otherwise. So here it's government, the university's research programs that serve as connectors of experts from different disciplines, experts in the different constituent universities of UP, and even other higher education institutions, government, private sector, civil society, industry. So basically, government, for instance, I remember this is Aghambayan. This is what I was talking about earlier as the showcasing of the projects that the OST actually supported that translated into innovations and technologies. So basically, government is very much a connector here. And then you have, well, of course, the Picadi project, which still has a lot of challenges. But interestingly, despite all the challenges, there are very significant projects and very significant results from the projects, although they're still going through the challenges. So basically, if you talk about universities and programs of universities, I put this here, Giselle, because basically Giselle was the one who initiated more than two, but of our research programs. So you have the emerging in interdisciplinary research, and we also have the enhanced creative work research grants. And basically these have also produced, because they have bigger funds. So they have produced also very, very interesting findings and very interesting innovations. Some of them are innovative and maybe can translate into technologies, but this is something that we also have to showcase. Another example of a center putting people together, maybe a center is CIDS and putting different programs together and convening different people, connecting. But there are other ways of connecting even within the university. My third note, and this is very interesting to me, is that the COVID-19 pandemic made me deeply appreciate the pool of multidisciplinary expertise in the university that can be tapped to address much needed research, and that organizes itself spontaneously because of the need, and pro bono. Within a few months, several teams across the UP system who were not necessarily linked to each other and not just the UP system COVID response team, projected the scale and trajectory of the pandemic, including projections on the state of transmissions based on local government data and municipal or city density maps based on current active cases. I guess where we have a gap is we have modelers, and there are different modelers. You have modelers in UPLB, you have modelers in UP Mindanao, and modelers, of course, in the COVID response team. And the thing is, maybe we have to enhance the connection. Maybe we have to have more of the discussions among the modelers about their assumptions, because we are all modeling and projecting that we are all modeling as UP. And basically, we have projects on infection. We have more than 220 projects focusing on the molecular biology and clinical features of the virus, clinical trials on an evaluation of treatment like the convalescent plasma, infection control measures, development of certain solutions to problems in COVID, engineering solutions like the prototype adult ventilators, disinfectants, decontamination through different means, the development of apps for more efficient case finding and monitoring, job risk calculators, analysis of the pandemic socioeconomic impacts, supply chain research, etc. Some of the COVID projects are also of interest because they are not only multidisciplinary, but also cross the different constituent units of UP. For instance, the collaboration between medical experts and engineers that I think Al is very familiar with in the development of the prototype adult ventilators is very inspiring. So we are now assigning them just yesterday, the same group, to reconfigure and design prototype classrooms in our transition to the next normal as a project. Some of the multidisciplinary projects have a more inclusive philosophy involving partners not only from academe but also from industry in their exercise of corporate responsibility, individual volunteers, the private sector. One such project is the development of the data lake for the COVID-19 pandemic. Although it was not able to go as far as diving into the lake and analyzing data, so it was really laying the infrastructure for research, for multidisciplinary research. The Data Lake project started serendipitously from colleagues in the UP Center for Integrative and Development Studies in partnership with the Board of Investments of DTI, the UP Computational Science Research Center, and Accenture Advanced Technology Center, who put aside a $2 million budget from their global corporate social responsibility to free up the services of their best data engineers and architects in the Philippine COVID-19 efforts to work with our physicists. Of course, when this was going on and there were talks with Accenture, my mind was asking, what is Accenture's interest in this? Well, it was my anxiety was laid to rest. There is no interest. Accenture is not interested in putting up a data lake in the Philippines global, but even the circumstance of working with them was because they were just being asked about certain things. They were at that time doing their CSR was the regular CSR of getting donors to actually contribute PPEs, etc. Until they realized that, oh, the CSR can actually be what they are good at. So basically, Accenture was commissioned by the Singapore government to put up its data lake, so they are not lacking in experience and expertise. The team decided to start a big data and AI initiative to help the government fight the challenges of the pandemic. Why do so? Because the many systemic problems we are facing require not only reliable information, but information that is so-called blended and layered in order to help decision makers that need to understand the many interdependent factors, health, economic, social, political, security, that cause these problems. However, information is not enough. To achieve evidence-based policymaking, a collaborative effort of scientists and policymakers to understand the surge of available information is also critical. So when the team approached the IATF through NEDA and the ICT, they were told that one such repository of information for COVID-19 matters was not in place. Actually, such data lakes exist in the other countries, and so it's easier for them to do their analytics. There is a group of data analytics, but without reliable, updated, and layered information and a collaborative approach in the analytical process, a good data analytics, much less big data and AI approaches, will not be possible. So the Data Lake project was meant to collect all information from various agencies of government, as well as new information being fed by various groups working on COVID-19. The next step was to pilot a collaborative approach to analysis, organizing various disciplines into a knowledge value chain, geared to produce actionable intelligence for government. For this pilot, or a proof of concept, the team focused on rice supply, because there are certain goods where the room for error is non-existent. So efforts to gather information in real time, because much of our information is already dated, in real time started. That involve UP, Los Baños Project Saray, the Jollibee Foundation, church partners, individuals. But then I guess it became difficult because the main obstacle proved to be in the area of convincing government agencies of the value of big data and initiative. The potentials of big data and AI are not yet well known in public policy circles, although the private sector has been quick to leverage its power for its own profit margins. While structural limits prevented the idea from becoming a reality, the team is continuing to pursue the proof of concept of the data lake and analytics from it, particularly for particular issues in Mindanao. So upon reflection, this all came very spontaneous. It was snowballing, but basically what I'm saying here is we are also capable of connecting and being inclusive in our connections. Upon reflection, even in the COVID project, we needed more connection among different teams of researchers for greater synergy and impact. This is a gap in UP. I was already saying, even among our modelers, we should have a platform, a venue by which they exchange, they discuss their different models. This is a gap in the University of the Philippines. I guess it's reflective of a gap even in our country. It is a gap between UP researchers and possible partners from other higher education institutions who can enrich our research. So this is really expanding beyond us. In fact, for the data lake, there was a whole discussion even with PASUC. The PASUC is the Philippine Association of State Universities and Colleges, about how the SUCs might be able to help with the gathering in real time. Except that there were structural limits, so it did not push in that direction. But potentially it could, maybe on a smaller scale, maybe not a data lake, maybe a data pool. An intergenerational gap between more senior researchers and the younger ones, between experts in other countries. It is easy to say, and this has been the discussion, let's put up strategic studies programs in the university. People say, let's do that. My response would always be, we need the champions, the organizers, the connectors at different levels, the organizers of meetings, colloquia, conferences, up to organizers of all collaborative research. But at whatever level, we need connectors with the grit and stamina of the ones who set up the UP Ateneo DLSU consortium a long time ago with the singular goal of producing the PhDs in the sciences. So even if we dream of a lot of this collaborative research and strategic research, unless you have the champions and unless you have people who have the fervor for it, it might not work as well. I'm speaking from my experience many years ago as the executive director of the Center for Integrative and Development Studies. It moves very fast if you have such connectors. Giselle is an excellent connector. PAASE has been a connector. Of course, PAASE is more than just a connector, but it has been a connector. I'm using the word connector in a very profound way. It's a connector, it's linking its passion in order to produce results. PAASE has been providing a platform for linking high-level experts in different universities, of intergenerational researchers, of researchers in government, in industry, and civil society. And I guess PAASE has managed to thrive for 40 years because it is able to effectively connect. In the time of COVID-19, PAASE leveraged technology to fulfill its mission. It actually utilized technology. I mean, I didn't expect that you would have a conference this long and using Zoom technology, but possibly it contributed to the fact that you contributed to the success of your conference because you have many more people who are able to attend even if they couldn't be physically there. So this technology that can be tapped and maximize to connect ideas and people contributed, I think, to the success of this conference. And we're very happy that we're here closing this conference. But basically, it is I beg PAASE to actually continue to connect and maybe scale up the connecting of people as a venue for us to come together and collaborate in research. So my main reflection is really connections. So congratulations to PAASE, congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Professor Bautista. Now, I know that this is a very interesting topic, but we'll wait until after our third speaker before we entertain any questions. Thank you again, Professor Bautista and Professor Alfonso.